Hi, welcome to another in our series of video learning modules with the Mother's Mental Health Toolkit project. I'm Dr. Joanne McDonald, working with the project and working from the Reproductive Mental Health Service and Dalhousie University here in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. This is another in a series where we explore the story of one mom and how her experience demonstrates the role that community service providers can have in mothers' mental health. So let's meet our mom. As a community service provider to mothers and young families, you can certainly create opportunities to promote and support mothers' mental health. And as you know, a mother's positive mental health promotes the development of her child, both in terms of their emotional and physical health, solid self-esteem and confidence, and skill in learning, and also for the very important skill of emotional regulation, which we think really underlies a lot of relationship and functional success throughout life. In the series Meet Our Mom, the Mother's Mental Health Toolkit project team will introduce you to case descriptions drawn from the real experiences of our mental health clinicians and our Family Resource Center partner staff. These moms have common presentations and problems that will challenge you to define your possible role and contributions to her well-being. The moms will also provide examples of how you might use some of the toolkit resources in your work with women. It might help to have a copy of your toolkit out for reference as we begin to meet our mom. And you could also print off this presentation and make notes as you go. So this mom is Deb. She's a 37-year-old hairdresser and a part-time waitress, parenting now an 18-month-old son. The pregnancy was unplanned and occurred in a casual partnership. They have a good relationship now, but are not primary partners. But they are co-parenting, and the biological dad is helping very much with financial support. She moved across the country from the small town she grew up in, and she has a few other friends in the hospitality industry, but only one of them is a parent. She says, though, that she always wanted to be a mother and was concerned now about her long hours, that John has to be in daycare, and how is that going to affect his attachment to her and his development emotionally. She quit smoking and drinking alcohol, she said, in the pregnancy. And she references that she had a history of polysubstance use in her teens and early 20s and says, that was a really rough time for me. She attends your play group on her Monday day off from the restaurant. Lately, she's very tense, jittery, less interested, withdrawn, and you notice that she's smoking again on breaks. So what are 3 possible mental health issues that come to you for Deb? We'll take a minute for you to think about that and maybe jot them down. So the Toolkit project team identified 3 possibilities. One, that, Deb is a bit older than many other single parents, and perhaps she's feeling isolated, has very little breaks in her week from childcare or work, carrying kind of on 2 jobs and building up stress. She has a history of substance use, and she could be vulnerable to a relapse of some use. Sometimes people don't go back to sort of the most problematic substance that they ever used, but they begin to rely on some other substance. So even though she may not be smoking a lot, for her the sign that she's sort of smoking in a stress response may be a signal that she's at risk more generally of relapse to substance misuse. Her concerns about attachment, third, may also lead us to explore why that is so important to her. What would you like to know more about this mom? So again, think about to sort of know how to begin to approach her, begin to work with her and support her. What would you need to know a bit more about? Well, we wondered about how does she feel she's coping with solo parenting? Well, she says she loves her son dearly, but lately she feels guilty about wanting a break from him occasionally, but that she doesn't like to get a babysitter where he's in daycare full time. She's staying up too late after he goes to bed, trying to have time for herself, and then is really becoming quite tired and irritable, tense during the day. What were her hopes for his experience growing up, and did she have thoughts from her own childhood? Deb discloses that she wasn't really close to her family, that she knew a lot of conflict in her home growing up, and that her mother did whatever she could do to escape. Not so much from Deb specifically, but from the conflict with Deb's father. She said she would never do that, and yet she sometimes feels like running away. So this creates a lot of confusion and distress for her. Thirdly, you asked what Deb's stress releases were in the past. Do they fit with her life as a mother now? Deb says she used to party with friends after the restaurant closed, have a drink or two with other wait staff, and liked to dance. She's begun to drink just a little wine and watch her tape TV shows after John is in bed. It should be okay. It's not like the partying of before. So what could be the role for you or your organization in her mental health as a mother? What are your ideas here? Possible roles and contributions we thought about were you could approach the whole idea of mothers and stress relief in a group series after playgroup. No one person's approaches or problems would be highlighted, and exploring substance use could be a component of that generally. This reduces the stigma around looking at it with a specific person with a history of problems in the past, and keeps it sort of in the realm of what we all need to do. Some would say drinking coffee is a substance use and a stress response. So we have strong ideas about what are good responses and what are more problematic responses. You could explore other socializing possibilities in your community for Deb that don't involve partying or drinking that she could participate in with John. And 3, Deb might benefit from exercises that look at self-concept and expectations, reducing the ideal of motherhood that she's trying so hard to live up to. How might you use the toolkit resource with Deb? Well, on pages 32 and 33, we explore the idea of stress and our responses generally. And stress is always a risk factor for mental health and addiction problems. As part of your group activity, you begin a list of how anyone might cope with stress, loss, pressure, etc. And emphasize that the list should include responses we think of as good and those we think of that may be bad or harmful. The full range of kind of what any human being might do in response to particular kinds of stresses. What is harmful at one age and stage, we have to remember, may change as life changes. And have the women privately check out substance use screening tools on page 39 and 40 of the toolkit. So you can hand these out and say people might or might not be interested to have a look at these checklists that come from sort of standard addictions references. So the CAGE questionnaire, the CRAFT, and HALT. Are you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? Deb comes to you before the next group and says she thinks she might be at risk of problem drinking again, but I don't want to make a big deal out of a few glasses of wine. That's okay, right? Often it's important for it not to be the judgment of someone outside of the person themselves that becomes the determinant of do I have a problem or do I not. So your support for her open consideration of what is and isn't working for her well-being at this time of life may be a really neutral and effective way to start. You suggest she track her thoughts, emotions, and responses and kind of do a bit of her own research. So pages 151 and 152 can be used to track any behavior or symptom of interest to the mom. You talk in the group about patterns and how it's typical for any of us to resist changing our patterns. Pages 44 and 45 look at who we would like to be and what change might be necessary to work towards that self-defined goal. Looking at substance use could be an aspect of that change. So what kind of person can I become? Key points in working with mothers in possible substance use problems are that we all have patterns and responses under stress. Approach substance use as you would any other behavior or strategy. Secondly, stigma and shame about being a mother with an addiction problem, even if it's been in the past and the person feels under control with it now, can certainly limit disclosure and consideration of change or intervention. Address those barriers first in your own mind and then also in your approach with a given woman or given group when you begin to address it. Third, people change most when they themselves seek the change. At least the change is most lasting. Sometimes people change out of a fear of punishment or how other people are going to react, but often that change isn't long lasting. So fundamental change comes from within. Explore the mom's situation and goals before you assume them or impose your wish for change onto her. Other resources that might be helpful to you are coalescing-vc.org, which is a BC-based website that explores policy and approaches and has a specific section on pregnancy, mothering, and substance use. Also, an American government website with self-directed questions and strategies for women is called Rethinking Drinking, and that's the National Institutes of Addiction and the NIH in the United States government. thinking about change is a very helpful click point within that website. Thanks for your attention and your interest in mental health and addictions work with mothers.